Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So thank you so much guys for taking a brief break from grinding on Master Duel to watch this, or maybe you're playing this in the background while you're on Master Duel. Whatever it is, I really do appreciate it. Anyways, today we are doing something a little bit different than your average Market Watch, with all of the cool new alternative formats announced to be coming to official events. We've seen a lot of movement on the market for some older cards that maybe aren't as relevant in today's game, but used to be relevant in iconic formats of the past. Today we're jumping back into Edison format, a format that has been picking up a lot of popularity recently, a very diverse format with decks like Heroes, Quick Draw Dandy, Gadgets, Synchro Cats, a lot of different things. This was really diverse. The format is named after the SJC that took place in Edison, New Jersey back in 2010, and this is a pretty skillful format that a lot of players look back at quite fondly. If you guys like the review of older cards from formats like this, make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me, and also let me know which other formats you guys would want to see down in the comments section below. Let's get started. So we're going to kick things off with one of the most important monsters of the Edison format. It is Caius the Shadow Monarch. Now, Edison format was a format where you didn't have too many crazy advantage generating cards. There's no Pot of Greed or Graceful Charity or Delinquent Duo here. Instead, advantage was a bit harder to come by, so card choices were really specific. One of the most important boss monsters of the format was Caius the Shadow Monarch, a pretty simple 2400 attack point monster that was level 6, allowing you to banish a card on the field when it's tribute summoned, and then if you banish a dark monster, you get to burn your opponent for 1000 damage. Caius was the answer to a lot of cards that could have been really difficult to deal with, getting rid of things like Colossal Fighter, Stardust Dragon, or even your opponent's back row. This thing could even banish itself to burn your opponent for game. In a lot of Edison format decks, Caius is a tribute summon monster that you run 2 to 3 copies of in the main deck just because it is such useful generic removal. Back then, we only had the structure deck printing of Caius, but now the card does have multiple printings. The Turbo Pack Ultimate Rares are quite expensive, around $200 each. The original Ultras and the Gold Rare printings are around $4 to $5. The Duelist League colored rares are anywhere from $5 to $10 depending on the color, and then even the common printings from Battle Pack or the new Monarch structure deck are worth $2 to $3 each. Aside from the Altis, which are really beautiful, I think that the Ultras look really clean for only a couple of dollars more than the commons. However, if you guys just want to play Edison format and need any low rarity version of this card, see if anyone has them lying around in their bulk from when Monarchs were a top tier deck with a new structure deck that came out just a few years ago. Next up, we have Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. So back in Edison format, there were a couple of pretty cool hero decks running around. They already had Stratos hit to 1, but Gemini based decks with Neos Alias were still around, and you could still search Malicious out even though it was hit to 2. Absolute Zero was a fusion monster that was released right before the start of Edison format. It was a 2500 attack point body that allowed you to destroy all of your opponent's monsters when it leaves the field. People were still finding ways to make hero cards useful, abusing Miracle Fusion to get this card out, as well as a ton of other different back row choices to control the game. Now, even when we're looking at these past formats, it's always worth keeping an eye out to see if heroes are a viable strategy or not, since there will always be fans that are looking to put together the deck, and Edison format heroes should be no exception. Absolute Zero has a few different printings, but it feels like some of the more recent, cheaper printings are still starting to creep up in price. The original Ultras from the little manga are around $35 each for a near mint copy. Do keep in mind though that actual near mint copies are quite hard to find. I see a lot of them getting advertised as being misprints or anything like that, when really they were just damaged by the way that the card was packaged, so be careful when you're looking to pick up your copies. There are a few other printings as well, a super rare promo from a special edition, an ultra rare printing from one of the Battles of Legends sets, and then an OTS tournament pack common as well. I feel like each of these printings used to only be like 25 or 50 cents on release, but now you're looking at anywhere from $2 to $5 for any of these lower rarity printings of the card. This is definitely a cool card, and it does have applications in other old formats as well, so if you're looking to play heroes in a number of different old formats, this is probably a card that you're going to want to pick up. Next up, let's move on to Thunder King Ryo. This card absolutely used to be one of the strongest standalone normal summons in the game. This card basically has a built-in mistake, preventing either player from searching while it's on the field, which is pretty amazing, coming from a 1900 attack point body. Its other effect lets you tribute it to negate the special summon of a monster. Now, it did have to be a special summon that does not start a chain, but this means that you could negate a synchro summon with this card when it looks like your opponent is going to make a synchro monster in order to out it. This card sees play in a number of different stun decks and is also a side deck option that some people choose to run as well. I remember even back then, before we saw so many buyouts and they were so commonplace, the common copies of Thunder King Ryo were still worth a bit even back then. Anyways, the card does have multiple printings, thankfully, with the ultimate rares up at $200, the secret rares at $30s, the golds at $7 to $8, and then the commons at $4 to $5. I believe there were 2 common printings, but since the last time the card was reprinted was back in 2014, I think they kind of get viewed the same for all intents and purposes. This is a card that did see quite a bit of side deck play and usage from stun decks for several years. So if you're the type of player that likes to play those anti-meta decks in old formats, this might be a card that's worth looking at picking up a set of. So on to the next card, we're looking at something that still isn't just for Edison format, but I believe it did still see play back then. This card is Gothams Emergency Call, so this is a pretty straightforward card. If there's an X-Saber monster on the field, you get to special summon 2 X-Saber monsters out of either player's graveyard for free. Now, X-Sabers weren't the most popular deck of the format, though they were still a pretty viable rogue strategy that fans of the archetype would probably still try to play looking back. However, there is a deck from this format played by Billy Break, which topped the Edison YCS, where he runs Rescue Cat with 3 copies of X-Saber Airbellum in the main deck, which is kind of cool since Airbellum can rip cards from your opponent's hand when it inflicts damage. It is also worth noting that in Jeff Jones's Quick Draw Dandy deck that took first place, he ran 2 copies of Gotham's Emergency Call in the side deck as well, allowing him to steal 2 of the opponent's Airbellums out of the graveyard. I don't know exactly how good this would be, but clearly it got him the win back in the day, and a lot of people will undoubtedly net deck 2 deck lists from 2 of the most well-known players in the history of the game. This card has 3 different printings, 2 lower rarity versions in the DT and common printings, which are only around $4 to $5 each, and then there's the Turbo Pack Ultra Rare, which is currently up at around $30 per copy. This card does seem a little bit niche to me, but if you're a fan of the X-Saber deck, this is a card that you should probably have. It's also something that's worth digging up out of your bulk, especially if these older formats continue to pick up in popularity. Up next, we have Evil Hero Infernal Prodigy. So when I first saw this card, I thought people were trying to do something with it in the current format. Theoretically, it's just a level 2 extender, right? This card lets you special summon itself out of your hand if you control no monsters, and if you tribute it for a hero monster, you get to draw a card during the end phase. Really simple effect. This card basically allows you to tribute summon Caius right away, which can be really important since Caius is generally going to be one of your main forms of removal. This card was used at 2 in a Diva Hero deck, which was built in 2021 for an Edison format tournament. Now, to be fair, worst case scenario, you could even tribute this card to summon Malicious if you've bricked so that you can draw a card during the end phase. Hopefully you can synchro off with the Malicious or something like that. Anyways, fortunately this card does have a more recent printing from the Legendary Duelist Immortal Destiny set, so accessibility isn't really an issue for the card itself. It's still available if you want to play it. However, the card only has 1 holo printing, which came out back in Duelist Pack 6 as a super rare back from 2007. I believe this card was like $30 a couple of weeks ago. Since then, it has cooled down, though there's still very few quantities available on the market, where you're probably going to have to pay $10 for an unlimited and $20 for a first edition copy. Although the older printing does look really cool, if I were you guys, I'd just go ahead and use the commons for now, see if the supers continue to drop in price as people gradually relist them back onto the market, and consider buying them then. Alright, the next card we're looking at here isn't necessarily a hero card per se, but it's basically played because of the hero deck. Gemini Spark is a quick play spell that basically allows the whole hero beat deck to actually exist, letting you pop a card by tributing your Neos alias and then drawing you a card in the process. Now, even though this is a net 0 overall in terms of card advantage, it was quite a big momentum shifter to resolve this card. You could pop a tuner to stop your opponent from synchro summoning, you could pop your opponent's tribute fodder, you could chain it to pop back row when Alias was going to die anyways, and you were also getting Alias into the graveyard so that you could special summon it back with Hero Blast. Now, for what it is, the super rare reprint of Gemini Spark did come out a bit too late. It was released in 2013 in an Astral Pack, which is a couple of years after Hero Beat was actually like a popular meta deck. Because of that, I feel like the card's only super rare printing is actually kind of undervalued, sitting down at between $2 to $3 per copy. The commons you can still get for only a quarter or so I feel like they're not really worth paying too much attention to unless you're just looking to grab a really low rarity playset for yourself to use. But if you can see Gemini Sparks sitting around in someone's binder or like a dollar binder at a store or something like that, now might actually be a pretty decent time to go ahead and pick those up. Alright guys, the last card we're taking a look at in today's episode is Blackwing Vayu, the Emblem of Honor. So Edison format is kind of past the prime of the Blackwing deck. Gale was hit to 1, Whirlwind was hit to 2, and Dark Strike Fighter was banned, so a lot of really important tools that made the deck so strong were now gone. Nevertheless, Blackwing still had a lot of potential as a stun deck, right? They had the ability to swarm the field and beat your opponent down with Kalut, as well as control the game with really powerful back row like Icarus Attack. One important piece from Blackwing decks back then that wouldn't see so much play in modern Blackwing decks is Vayu, a level 1 tuner that basically allows you to synchro summon for Blackwings out of your graveyard. If you have an armed wing in your graveyard, this meant that you could bring out an Armor Master for free out of nowhere, which was honestly pretty crazy for its time. In fact, I believe there are some Blackwing builds called Vayu Turbo that play Armageddon Knight and Dark Grepher for the purpose of getting Vayu into the graveyard as early as possible and then abusing him to bring out big bodies for free. Of course, the late 2000s and early 2010s are the time that made Blackwing so popular, so much so that I think a lot of people are still fans of the deck to this day. However, Vayu is a card that has limited printings available. The ultimate rares are around $55 for unlimiteds. First eds are a crazy amount, almost $200 each. The secret rare reprints or the original ultras aren't too bad at $13 to $15. And then the 10 super rare reprints are still around $10 each, and those are the only printings of the card. So you're looking at spending a minimum of $10 per copy. Depending on what Blackwing deck you're wanting to play, you might want to keep an eye on the prices of Vayu moving forward. It's hard to see where or why they would reprint it, and if they don't, Blackwings are iconic enough that I could definitely see this card continuing to climb up in price. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. So I am by no means a pro when it comes to Edison format. It is something that my friends and I have started to look into playing a bit as well, but I wasn't playing during this actual era, so a lot of what I'm looking at and saying is based off of my understanding of the game and some limited research that I've done, so please do correct me if there's anything that I've missed or haven't explained sufficiently. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's video, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Also, if you want to see more content like this, maybe where I talk about some other key cards from some other old formats, let me know what formats and cards you guys want to see in the comment section down below. Also, if you haven't already and you guys want to see more content like this on a regular basis, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.